Okay, so our next presenter today is Patricia McInroy. Patricia is a filmmaker, photographer, and educator who grew up in Wyoming. She has screened her video work in more than 30 film festivals across the United States, as well as in Europe and Latin America. She was interviewed on Colorado Public Radio for her direction of the PBS documentary titled Clara, Angel of the Rockies. Her photographs have been published in Newsweek, USA Today, and U.S. News and World Report. Patricia graduated with an MFA an MFA in Visual Arts from the Vermont College of Fine Arts in 2007, and has been teaching at Rocky Mountain College of Art and Design since 2014. She currently lives in Denver with her wife Jennifer and a very talkative cat named Micah. Please join me in welcoming Patricia McInroy.
Hi, thanks so much for coming. I'm really excited to be on this stage because I love coming to all the art talks, and it's just really an honor to be up here. So I've been teaching at RIMCAD for about 4 years now, and I currently teach in the graphic design department, but I've also taught in fine arts, commercial photography, and what's that other one? Oh, animation department. So anyway, this is sort of an example of work that's more like gallery oriented. So there's not a beginning or an end. And I'm really excited that my students came today. We'll be learning how to do this. Please stick around, keep coming to class. So my work is kind of a balance between documentary and conceptual and still and moving. And this is another piece. The next piece I'm going to show is an example of that. Just keep staring at the screen. That's it. So that's a 1-minute piece. That's one of my more popular pieces. It's played in a handful of film festivals, and it's also played in galleries. And as Gretchen mentioned, I grew up in Wyoming. I've lived in Colorado for quite a while. I moved here from New Mexico, so I'm really sort of steeped in the interior West, and that's related to that. I was lucky enough to be part of the Living Gallery, which was an opportunity here at RIMCAD that faculty could apply for an artist residency here. Our work showed in the galleries on either side of the auditorium with Julie Puma and Frank Varney. It was really great, and it was really an honor to be included in it. And also, it was one of the few times that I've been able to have a gallery work with me, put up my work, and it felt like sort of fancy for doing that. So that work is a lot more of the conceptual side. Prior to that, the work that I did was really documentary work. I did a lot of work on the US-Mexico border as a photojournalist, and that informs some of my current work. So what grew out of that was I got to do an exhibit at Counterpath, which is here in Denver, and they'd seen my documentary work on the border, and they said they would like to exhibit it, but I wanted to do something new. So on that block at the time, there was a bus that was going to Mexico once an hour. And I went and interviewed people waiting in line for the bus. And then projected on the sidewalk are their comments in Spanish and English, back to back, projected on a loop while people were getting on the bus. So there's more to the exhibit than that, but I just kind of wanted to give you a little background. The thing that Gretchen mentioned was the Clara Brown documentary. And that grew out of, well, really, my partner was riding down the bike path and saw a sign about Clara Brown and came home and said, "This is such a cool story, like you're not gonna believe it." And I couldn't believe it. I started Googling Clara Brown. I'm like, why have I not heard of this person? Clara Brown was a slave in Kentucky, and when her last owner died, he freed her in his will. She made her way to Colorado in 1859, and she amassed a fortune of $10,000. And then she used that money to go help other slaves when they were freed in 1865 when the Civil War ended. And so she's this amazing Colorado figure. I'm like, why did I not hear about her before? And so I submitted it to a contest PBS had on a show called To the Contrary, and it aired on 90% of all the PBS stations. And that's how I got on Colorado Public Radio. So that was really cool. But I wanted to talk more about my work from the last couple years. So I just have 3 totally different projects I've been working on the last couple years. And the stuff I just mentioned a minute ago kind of feeds into that. So one of them is Nicodemus, Kansas. While working on the Clara Brown documentary, people would mention Nicodemus, Kansas, as if I'd heard of it, which I had not. And so I went home again and Googled it. I'm like, what's this? And again, this story was so amazing. I was like, why have I not heard about this? We have so many gaps in our history that need to be filled. So Nicodemus, Kansas was founded by ex-slaves in 1877. And what's even more amazing is that descendants of those founders still live in that area. And so I was excited about that and I wanted to learn more about it. So I'm going to tell you a little bit more about my process. First, I had to be interested enough to do it. So the kind of work that we're doing, we have to do it in our free time. And I was interested enough to learn about it. First, I did some research. I looked at the public library to see if there were any books on it. There was 1 book. I looked on Amazon. There was 1 other book. So I read those books. Then I did more research. I found some articles online. I saw what had already been written about them. And then I did some more research. So you see a theme. But, I'm also pointing it out because for our students, I think this is a nice opportunity to see what your instructors are doing, but also for us to kind of model what it is that we're doing. And so this part of it, I started to watch some videos that were online. And particularly one woman captured my attention. Her name was Angela Bates, and she'd given a 1-hour talk about her own family. She's the director of the Historical Society at Nicodemus. So then I made contact. So by the time I made contact, I felt informed enough to not sound stupid when I talked to her, basically. She had no idea who I was, but I felt like I already knew her. And then I showed up. So I asked her, hey, I'm going to come to your annual event. I would love to talk to you. And she said, okay, even though she didn't know who I was. And then I showed up. That's their old schoolhouse. So at this point, I've actually met people that attended school at this schoolhouse, which is pretty cool. From that point, I followed up again. So I sent them some photos. I sent photos to Angela Bates and said, here's some photos from your celebration. Nicodemus is also a national park site. So because of the historical value of it, Angela Bates has helped make it a national park site. So I sent some photos to the National Park Service, and they also said, hey, this is really cool, thanks a lot. Then they thought that was it, but it wasn't, because I was still working on a video. I'd interviewed some people while I was there. I had some other still footage, and so I made a little video, and then I followed up again. I said, hey, by the way, I finished this video. And then Angela Bates wrote me an email, which I think she thought was really complimentary, but it said, this is as good as some other work I've seen. But to her, that was like, okay. So she said, next time I come to Denver, let's hang out. So we did. And then I did some more re-editing, and I've actually continued to edit that video within the last month. When Angela Bates and I met up, she said, I'd like to have you do some more work in Nicodemus. And that was really exciting because, I came there not having any connections. And I should go back and mention, with the Clara Brown documentary, I wanted to make sure I wasn't stepping on anybody's toes. And so I contacted the Black American West Museum and I said, here's what I'm working on. I'm wondering if you guys would sort of be interested in seeing what I'm doing, or if you have other resources. And they said yes, and they invited me to a board meeting, and I presented what I was doing, and they said, we think this is great, keep going with it. They gave me a couple people to interview, so that was really cool. And Angela Bates said that she was already writing a grant, and that she would like to include me on that grant. So that developed into this, which these are some portraits I shot this past spring. These are some of the oldest members of the Nicodemus community, and they range in age from 70 to 102 years old. So he's 102. That's Kenneth Jones. He still lives at home. He still drives. I don't know if he should be driving, but he was in World War II. He was in the Dust Bowl. It was really cool to get to talk to him. And then this is how the photos were exhibited at their community center. So that was part of their celebration this year. Some of the best moments, getting handed a grant for something I was already interested in doing. Okay, I didn't make any money, but it paid my expenses to go back there and shoot the photos. Being thanked publicly from the stage at Nicodemus Homecoming, that was this past July, and having the short documentary selected for 2 film festivals. So it's going to screen in Kansas City this month, so I'll be going to the screening. It'll be the first time I've screened it with an audience, and so I'm pretty excited about that. And then the next project I want to talk about is called Artists Off Grid. I especially wanted to mention it today because it's an artist residency that you can apply for. You have to live off the grid though. And so we were camping out, we had to provide our own food, and it was kind of a challenge. So I would shoot every day for about 3 hours. I would edit every day for a couple hours, usually till my battery would run down. And then we would have critiques about every 3 days. Most of the other artists were painters. And you had to try to survive because we didn't have running water or electricity. And it was just a real challenge. I had the luxury of being able to go out and shoot again. So I would go out and shoot again, and then sometimes the lighting conditions would be better. I would get more ideas. And you'll probably see a relation to this in the open video that I showed, which is this kind of signage that's part of the West. And again, the border idea, the idea of boundaries, like what belongs to who, what lines can you cross, and then just that openness. So I did another theme that was on pathways, that kind of open feeling that you get from being in the West. And the last project I wanted to talk about was one, again, with my mom, called Low Tech Talk. My mom's name is Opal. She's 85 years old. She still lives at home in Casper, Wyoming. And the process, well, first it was just like an excuse to talk to my mom and my dad. So I would interview them when I go home to visit. And sometimes when you interview people, they'll talk about things that are different than what they would talk about in conversation. And I was always thinking about that, the generational gap with technology. And I also teach at another school called Denver School of Photography. My students there are older, and sometimes they don't feel very smart with technology. And I wanted to flip the script because my mom's an expert on stuff that's low tech, okay? So she didn't have running water or electricity until she was 12 years old. And so for her to have to be around computers and all this stuff, you know, I think she's really funny when she explains technology, and also like early technology. So my dad died last year, and as we were going through his stuff, we kept coming across old technology. One of the first things was a manual typewriter. I'm not talking about an electric typewriter. I mean, you don't plug it in or anything. So my mom would explain that stuff. Some of the topics, well, these are all the topics. I made 10 short videos. They're all 1 minute to 2 minutes long. So you kind of get the idea. So I'm going to play one of those as like the end to this. And they're all online, so if you want to see them all, they're all online.
We're living in an age now where mail that is sent by the U.S. Postal Service is called snail mail. It used to be, when I was a kid, that it was 3 cents. You know, we put it on a sheet of paper and we'd tell them what was going on, just as you do with your email. You could keep it, and you could keep it for 50 years if you want to. We can buy stamps ahead of time. This happens on a roll. I have stamps for months and months. They have a strip of glue along the side here. Others have a piece of paper along here that you can rip off and get to the sticky part. Many people prefer that because they don't want to leave their DNA on the envelope in case for some reason the cops find it.